Hey, welcome to another Python tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be explaining the yield keyword that is used to create generator functions. But before starting, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It really helps me a lot. So let's get into it. Now, Python has this yield keyword. So if you type yield, then it shows up as a keyword. But you can use this keyword to create generator functions out of Python. So a normal function, we basically say define using the def keyword and the function name and the brackets, semicolon, and we put something inside the function. So we say, let's say print hello. Now, if we execute this function, okay, let me select the Python environment. Okay, so if I run this, it would save the function, and to actually print it, we will need to execute the function. So this returns the hello as because we are printing it. Now, in certain functions, when we are writing code about certain logic, sometimes we may have for loops inside the function. So let's say I have for I in range 0 to 10, print I. So let's execute this, and this would print the numbers from 0 to 9, as that's the range that we are providing. But another way to approach this is to create generator functions out of it. Now, instead of printing it, what I would do is I would yield the print. Now, if I execute this and again execute the function, this time what we are getting is a generator object instead of a function. Now, whenever we put the yield keyword inside a function, Python automatically converts that function into a generator function. Now, one property of this generator function is the function doesn't get executed unless it's called as an iterator by a loop, or we actually execute this function. So if I type in print hello, execute the cell and execute the function, you can see that when I executed this function, it didn't print the hello word that we are printing it, because we are yielding the print, but we are not yielding the print that's above it that prints the hello word. This is because whenever we put the yield keyword inside the function, it automatically creates a generator function out of it, and if we execute this function, it would return a generator object. And in this function is the logic that we have mentioned here. So if I remove the yield keyword and execute it, then you can see it prints the hello. But as soon as I put the yield and execute it, it returns a generator object and not even execute this print. Now, how to use this generator function? So to use it, what we say is for I in function do I. As soon as we do this, you can see it prints the hello world. Now, you don't need to necessarily execute it. We can just say pass and it would still execute it, because as soon as it is passed to an iterator, then only the generator function is gonna get executed. When we use the yield keyword, what happens is the logic isn't executed at once, and we can execute whenever we want to call that logic. And in generator, that statement won't get executed unless it needs to be executed. So this actually in turn speeds up our execution. Now, to better understand why it is faster to execute and use generator function, I will give you an example of how in some use cases we could benefit out of this feature. So let me define a function again. And in this function, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna define an index, and I'm gonna say index equals 0. And what I'm gonna do is while true, return index, but instead of return, I'm gonna do yield. And before the index, I'm gonna say index plus equals 1. So increment the index and yield it instead of returning it. Now let's save this function Now after this, what I'm gonna do is say gen for generator object equals function. Now this function would return the generator object. Now to execute it, what I'm gonna say is next gen. So this is gonna execute and find the first yield. And in the first execution, I'm returning the index. Now if I execute it again, then what it's gonna return is 2. Now, what we can understand from this is when we executed next gen, what it did was it didn't execute the entire list at once. It just executed the first iteration of the while loop. And as soon as it hit the yield statement, it returned 1 but didn't do anything other than that. It didn't went for the next iteration of the loop, even though we have just stated while true. For normal functions, if there is just, uh, let's say, print index, this is basically gonna end up being in a infinite loop and we don't want that. So if I keep executing it, it's constantly gonna do the next iteration of the loop of the generator function and we can constantly get the next value out of it. So if I regenerate the function and say print next gen and execute it, let's say 5 times, we get the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So using the next function, like next is an inbuilt function in Python. So using this next function, we can get the next iteration of the generator function. So yeah, that was the Python generator function or the yield keyword for you. I hope it helped you to understand what the yield keyword does and what are generator functions in Python in general. If you have any doubts, feel free to mention them in the comments. And if you want a specific topic for me to create a video on, then do mention that in the comment too. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it helped you to learn something new. Hit that subscribe button, like my video, and I'll meet you in the next video. And here are some videos that YouTube thinks you would like.